Hello and welcome to a Python and Django live coding hangout. Today we'll be continuing to work on the companionship care app. I've got a little bit of pull request review from a new contributor. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And we'll select an issue. I think we're going to take a look at this project localization task so we can get some translation rolling on the project. We're going to start with the Finnish language, and maybe if we get some other contributors, we can crowdsource languages like Dutch or Swedish or any language. This tool is, pretty much universally useful. Everybody needs companionship, no matter what language you speak. Let's get some tea and get started. Got a little bit of sencha tea today. Yesterday, or last live stream, was a coffee day. Alright, so this, I didn't give myself much context for this task. But since we've got this contribution on the line, I'm going to see if I can do anything to move this pull request forward first. That way it doesn't get out of sync with the development, because that can be kind of painful to... when you have a branch that's getting out of sync and updating changes in that, and I don't want it to sort of derail this contribution. So we've got Aniket here. Aniket Aryamane from India. Very cool. Thank you, Aniket, for this contribution. It was during the live stream, actually pretty... Seemingly, it was, for me at least, difficult. I don't know if Aniket found it difficult to refactor a view from a function-based view to a class-based view. And essentially, we're editing a user profile. Let me just start up this project here. Just easier for me to hit exit and then open a new terminal. So it'll automatically activate the virtual environment, run the server. So we'll have this project running locally. So when I'm logged in as a user, I want to edit my profile. Now the thing is, like normally if I go to a person and like add a person, and when we view that person, we'll have some basically arguments in the URL typically that lets us identify and query for the related entity, in this case a person, in the database. Now our profile page doesn't look like that. There's no kind of URL argument because there's not multiple profiles associated with a user. So when you visit this page, when any user visits this page, an anonymous user can't, they have to be logged in. But the view fetches the profile for the request user. So that makes this view code a little bit more difficult. Not only that, but it accepts a post. So if I update my profile, and let's add a couple exclamations to my name, right? It'll accept a get and post request here. In the case of the post request, it's going to process a form. Otherwise, it's going to send the template of form and instantiate it with the request user. And by user profile, we're essentially meaning the user object, but a subset of the fields. You can only change your name and your email address here. I'm going to add the ability to change password, actually, now that I think of it. And I don't know how the UX will flow there, but could be as simple as a one field. The problem is a person could lock themselves out, and we would have to reset their password by email, and that's not quite configured. This project's a bit new, so that will beg the feature to have a password reset. My typing today is to load up. Let me just think about this, because I want it to be, I don't have an exact solution here. I want it to be a little bit of a broad description, giving myself or any other developer the opportunity to kind of explore this space here. Choose the invest is a tricky one. It's all about trade-offs. So yeah, this is a pretty broad description, but I want to just articulate that it's more of a conceptualization process. There could be a ready-made library, and maybe that our project already has support for that. This bootstrap quick start that I made, boilerplate for the project that I used to spawn this project. I don't think I had put that feature in there. It might be a good one to go in the cookie cutter or the boilerplate, since it's such a common thing. It just needs a little bit of higher level stuff like email support, although Django has a default email backend that'll just output the email contents to the terminal or console. All right, so we're going to get in a little bit bigger picture, but that helps to flesh out the project and backlog. So we got this post profile page that takes a post and lets you update your details. I had written it as a class-based view. I think I was following in a tutorial too, and class-based views are really valid and flexible, and that's one of the, as mentioned in our previous session, one of the most the best examples of the Django framework kind of getting out of your way if you need it. You can just write any arbitrary Python code in your view that just returns a response, even if it's just a string. Now, when you want to embrace the framework, it'll oftentimes make things more concise and well organized, but that learning curve, it can be steep and probably leads to the idea that the framework gets in your way at times. And I think it's mainly that there's a knowledge gap that needs to be overcome typically. But once you've done that, the framework will actually support you, I think, much more than were you to write all that stuff by yourself, which kind of that phrase, the framework gets in the way, doesn't acknowledge the amount of work that goes into implementing those features in your own way and designing your own framework, which is essentially what you're doing. You're going to have a framework at the end of the day, regardless. It's a set of tools and conventions, whether or not you've devised them or they've been collectively evolved like Django, you're still going to end up with a framework. And that's going to get in your way at times in different ways, including when new developers or even yourself come to look at the code from a fresh perspective. That's going to lead to the similar situation where they'll feel confused, or might feel, that gap might be perceived as the architecture impeding their progress or getting in their way. So that said, class-based views have been introduced to Django for quite a while, and they can lead to more concise code and semantic code. So when I wanted to switch to this class-based view, And for the most part, it was fairly straightforward. So in this function, if a user is submitting a post and a form view abstracts this away, it just knows how to handle the request. So you don't have to think in terms of the request type, which is kind of nice. You just pass it a form. It's the same deal. Instead of explicitly or imperatively saying, here's the form, otherwise pass it. You just tell more declaratively, here's our form class, here's our form template. And when the form is successfully submitted, go here. Whereas this kind of declarative logic is spread out through my imperative code here. So already that's more concise. The problem that I encountered was that in our view, the request doesn't have, well, it has the information about the user who's submitting this. And I just couldn't figure out how to create a new form instance that gets the current user's profile instead of an argument from the URL, which is already supported. And that is where Aniket came in and maybe was watching the stream. And so it boils down to when we start this, when we start to render the view, we're going to set up the initial form. That data comes into the request. This is pretty straightforward. Actually, from the request user and populates, I guess, populates the form fields and returns it, which gets passed to the view to render in the template in case of a GET request. Now they added, Aniket added this get context helper to attach the form to a context data, a property of the context data called user underscore form. That was just legacy. When I wrote the template, that's what I called it. But I'm happy here if we just get rid of this function and just change my template. So that's what I'll just go ahead and do here. Other than that, this was the part I couldn't absolutely figure out, and also this was a bit trickier than I was hoping. Where when we want to validate the form, when the form is valid, like the fields were submitted correctly, we want to grab the user for the request user, so the person who's submitting the form, their own profile update, and update them by spreading the form data, because it's the form is actually a user profile form. So it's basically a model form that's extending on the Django user form, and so it's got a model instance, and on the class when you save the form, it saves an instance of that model. So let's see if I can just check this branch out in VS Code. If I look at my GitHub integration here and make a couple changes to the branch and just go ahead and merge it. Typically in pull request review, you'll have a reviewer come in and check out the code, and they might make some suggestions, and then you could have a little bit of a turnaround there. But I don't have any, I'm already grateful for Aniket for having contributed this, so I'll just go ahead and pull it over the line a little bit. So you can see here's another form that for the sign up page where essentially it gets passed into the view, and we want to render it. And the default template variable is called form. So we're going to just change that to align with the Django defaults. It just saves a few lines of code by convention over configuration. Okay, so I'm going to have to sign into GitHub really quick. I'm not signed in yet, so let me see if, 1 second, this process is going to be BRB. Okay, there's a little bit of a challenge with the OAuth authentication, but now I'm signed into GitHub here. So next time I'll try to do that in advance. The cool thing with this GitHub integration with VS Code is it lets me look at these pull requests, and then I can check out that branch and run it and such like that. Now first I can make sure I can update my profile. So let's go ahead and look at the code side by side. That's the way I like to do it. So we got the same view here. There's no errors when I navigate to the view. Let's make my user a little less excited. A new user. We can save it and then email it with this. Interesting. Oh, darn. Darn. So yeah, when it tries to update the user, it's got this validator that's uniqueness constraint on the database, and won't let the update happen. Weird. So I'm gonna have to come back to this pull request. Yeah, this is trickier. This I haven't had such difficult difficulty writing class-based views, but the nature of this one, there may be a succinct way of doing it. So for now, I think we're going to have to stick with the function-based view. Let's take a screenshot of this. And got my screenshot tool. And I'll just report this in the issue. I mentioned to Anycat that I was going to run the code. Today I was a little bit tired when they submitted it. Copy that to clipboard and come back over here. Password reset. But I did basically a quick code review, and code looks good, but it is this part is sticky. Update. All right. So I'll just add a comment in here. Strange. I'm not sure what more constructive I could add to that comment. I'll have to think about it a little bit more. Sometimes I'm just going to post something like an observation. It's this observational statement, and it's not necessarily a criticism. It's just literally saying what I kind of ran into, and I don't necessarily have a constructive suggestion in that case. I usually try to at least, for example, in code review, suggest an alternative if there's some stylistic issues there, and I'll even as I did in this one, offer GitHub lets you make a suggestion when you're commenting on the code, and so I actually made a couple of suggestions and then committed those. They were minor stylistic things, but just don't leave commented code in the thing. You know, when you have a new working thing, then yeah, we can clean up the old thing. That's all. So simple, and I committed those. But yeah, this one I'm pretty stumped on this. So I hope we can move this forward. You know, I'm not like super strict about obviously using class-based or function-based views by any means. I like consistency. So I think this is worth trying, but not worth like a whole lot of effort if we can't get it right. I think it's something here that object filter is just trying to update an object. I was thinking, since we have the form, what if we just do form save? Actually, let's try it out. So the view here, let's open the file. Okay, there is a context variable. I can clean that up. If I just delete that and then edit the template. We're looking at the profile form, yeah. So the profile form is here. I am using this registration package, I think, that might have an email reset template. Yeah, instead of calling this user form, if I just save this, then we don't need to set the context variable. So let's try to, whoops. Here we go, and refresh that. No. Just, yeah, so that's a simple change. I'll commit that and push that. Cleans up, less code is more. We don't need a whole several lines of code just to override a template context variable. So now by pushing directly to this branch, well, I've already done that. I already committed and pushed on GitHub because you can accept changes here. So I've already made commits to this branch, and I'm working remotely here. So I'll just continue that. Normally, it's probably a better process for me to like fork the branch of the contributor whose code I'm reviewing, and then make the suggested changes there and open a pull request against their branch. That lets them have the opportunity to continue working locally on their problem and then selectively merge my suggestions in there. But this project, we don't have a big process around this project, but essentially let's just go ahead and commit this, push it. Alternatively, people can just say, hey, project owners can push directly to my pull request branch here, and which I think Anycat's done here. I don't think that was doing anything else, and I hope this isn't breaking anything. Let me just double check it. So all we're doing here is get the context data, running the super, and adding one variable with the get form method, which essentially this is already done in the super arguments. We would in turn have two context variables here, form and user form, which both contain an instance of the form. So it's just a little bit of redundancy. And in the function-based view, that was a necessity because the class-based view does a lot for us and saves us, as mentioned, from writing a considerable amount of code just by passing, defining something declaratively. So let's push this up. And Anycat has allowed me to make changes directly to their branch here, so that worked. I can refresh that. A little bit cleaner. So I'm trying to help move this forward, but still stumped, still relying on and black formatted that too, so that was a little bit different. Yeah, the other thing I was thinking in this form valid thing, what if since we have the form, we do a form save? Form save. Okay, so let me think here for a second. It doesn't have an instance, a user instance, right? When we get initial, it's a user form, so it should be able to take the user instance. Which I also try this. Let's see what just this get initial does. I'll take one more stab at this. I think this is the right place. If we can attach the user instance to the form here, then we don't even have to have this line of code. But what does the get initial function do? Let's see. Well, it's a bit challenging, but so super is form view. Ah man, I go to one of the things with poetry is I don't get this Django IntelliSense go to definition stuff. I want to use poetry mainly for the ability to update all packages to the latest compatible versions, and it has some nice things like using pi, env. But in some ways, the IDE integration is a little bit suffering. Get initial actually, so we'll see if we can. And get initial could come from they've switched to a form view. I was using an instance, a model form. Initial value or instance. Self instance. Keeping an eye on the chat over there. Move this T out of the way. It's got a big thermos. Yeah, I was thinking, what if self instead of here would be just self request user? I wish I could just jump to that. Ah, that's a view in any case, so let me see. I think it's some weird thing if I do this. No, I use a relative one here. If I jiggle the handle, sometimes that'll work. Because this I literally have written. So that's still the case. Yeah, so this is just a standard form view. It's going to pass the form in. Yeah, okay, so where are we at? Here we are. Yeah, so this is good. It's this get initial form view. What if I say instance? And then I say ignore these. Then we probably wouldn't need this. No. Yeah, I don't know what that function's expecting, so never mind, let's guess. Yeah, it's highlighting it. Okay, so yeah, middle. Highlighting it, and I can maybe go here. Go. So what if we do, instead of get instance, we say get our initial get form, call super on it, which essentially returns a form instance, and then add the model instance into that. I'm gonna try the last thing, and then I'm gonna move on. Localization, that's something that's tractable for me. I can think about it and maybe get it to work. So instead of this at all, we would maybe try. Let me just grab this. Super. Well, it's pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Get my mouse over. And we're basically gonna copy. Why did I do that? So this hopefully will do nothing. It's basically no op. Haha. It's basically an update view. Granted, they're saying their code is broken, but I think some of it's on the right track. So we got the form class, template name, success URL, I think should be fine. And the get object. Really? Huh. Yeah, and we just don't get, wow. Whoa, dude. Yeah, really straightforward. Very few lines of code. Let me think of a thing. I was just thinking about the little notification. It's kind of annoying, a little pop over when you can see your thing was saved. I don't need that. Probably a little notification. I can take it out of the template or something. Okay. Wow. Thank you. The question had the answer for me. Just sign in 1 second. BRB. Yep, give the points there. Wow, that was nice. Yeah, that was the problem. We just needed to associate the user with the form instance. And that's what an update view does. It has the wiring, but my limited knowledge of the framework, or limitations, you always have limited knowledge, of course, right? And couldn't see the path forward. But Anikat got me in the right direction. Encouraged me to take a second look at it and made some contributions here. So let's go ahead and commit this. Instead of a form view, we just use an update view. That makes sense. And we have unused imports up here. Looks like we got a lot of imports up there. Yeah, because once we got rid of that function-based view, we don't need half of these. and I'm not using the messages framework. I'm going to stick with that decision because it was a little bit annoying up there. But, 6 1/2 dozen another. Yeah, and so this is the beauty of one of the benefits of the class-based views. They're pretty concise. They're also composable, I think is another thing, where the function-based views, I guess, are harder to maintain. But I don't know. I don't have that deep of experience to explain more of the benefits. I do like the conciseness, though, and the declarative nature of it. Mostly you're just saying, hey, this is that, do it, and then every once in a while you need to get in there and override one of the parent methods. So yeah, let's get this going there. Use what basically we did is use update view. From request. Where's the request here? Push those up. Take a sip of tea. I'll just refresh this, but I don't see. You know, I mean, I've already done this. Yahoo! Jimmy John's. All right. Cool. Now we can get on with the localization aspect of this project. Still internationalizing. I'm going to add some texts. Maybe add a language switcher. We've got time now. We've got some time. And get those, extract the little PO strings, I guess, whatever it is that have the translations in them, and upload it to this service called PoEditor. And let the crowdsourcing begin. So let's take another quick look at this pull request, but it's looking pretty solid. You know, we cleaned up the context variable using the default there, so that meant less code. And then we switched to a class-based view. Nice. Cleaned up our imports. And now we have to create an update view, which is definitely what we needed. This is very conventional because we are just performing CRUD operations here. And got rid of some kind of verbose and imperative code for a few lines of mostly declarative logic. Just a slight imperative to telling it where to get the user, the initial instance from. Very clean. I like the direction of this. It's kind of showing the power and conciseness again of the class-based view approach. I think this is ready to roll. I'll approve my own code as well as Anikat's, you know, just all in one bundle. Normally you'd want another reviewer and approver, but looking good. This is resolved. Rebase and merge, so that's a question. In your Git workflow, do you prefer, or does your team prefer, rebase or merge commits? Leave your responses in the discussion below. I'd like to hear what people's experience are with both of those approaches in general. I think there's trade-offs to both approaches, but I won't bias you. And I'm just using that on this project because I'm the sole developer, so I think a little easier when you're the main developer, but then when you get a lot of other contributors, it can start causing. But again, I don't want to bias your response. So what is your preference, rebase or merge commit? Or squash? Do you squash all the things into one commit and merge? Cool beans. Update, what was an update view? Actually, let's take a quick aside, because in this type of project, we'll get contributors, mainly, code contributors, but we want to also encourage any type of contributor and acknowledge those contributions. And there's this really neat kind of a service called Any Contributor. No, sorry, All Contributors. There it is. Recognize all contributors, not just the coding types. Now, this was a code contribution, but seriously, this is important, that there's a lot of ways you can contribute to open source projects, or just any kind of project in general. And coders kind of get the esteemed seat at the table, but really, it all matters, especially community building and documentation, helping people get started. So I'm going to install a bot on this repo real quick. So you install a GitHub app. I configure my repositories. So let's see, I've done this. Configure the repositories. Get my authentication code. One moment, let me do this off stream. Be right back. Very cool. So just authenticated. So it takes you to this all contributors configuration page, which I could have found. Also, you can go to your organization settings and GitHub apps down here, and it should show a list of these. I'm not going to go away from this page real quick. Let me just open this in another tab. We'll take a quick look. Yeah, so I've got a couple apps configured on this. DigitalOcean I'm using for deployment, automatic deployment in our organization. Cold Climate is doing some code scans. Maybe we'll get that going on again as well. Or if you have any suggestions for alternative code quality metrics and automation services that will scan your code for common code smells or security vulnerabilities, let me know. I'll be glad to try them out, but Code Climate's a pretty good one there. And here's the all contributors bot. So we'll just go to the configuration page where we already are. And essentially, well, I might as well just configure it on all the Jerry Life repositories. Now I don't have to mess with this anymore. Good to go. So then the cool thing is we go back over here. We mentioned all, in fact, I think I have a prefab for this. Let's see, that's not what I was trying to do. Canned response, all contributors. Here we go. Please add anycat for anycat is their GitHub name. Interesting. And you say what the type of contribution was. So let's see. I think we went away from the all contributors page. We'll go ahead and read the docs a little bit, but I've used it a little, and it'll build you this contributor section in your README, which is nice. I can add myself to our README as well. And there's particular types of contributions it adds, and we're going to also add a little bit of configuration. And actually, this list is growing. So as you can see, you can just go through a few of these. You can make podcasts or audio recording the sound effects, for example, for a game or promoting a tool. You can help with accessibility, either testing or writing accessibility code, reporting and fixing bugs, blog posts, helping with business development. This is crucial. And I've got a couple of projects where we're trying to make them into little businesses while being open source, but also in some way helping the project grow financially. Code contributions is pretty obvious, and that's kind of the one that gets the most attention anyway. Writing content for websites, for example. We have got a couple projects that are dealing with open data, so when we can get some data sets into those, it's really helpful. Documentation, design, example probably in the documentation, organizing events, getting people excited about it, helping financially, or finding funding, coming up with ideas. Those are valid too and important. If you got an idea for these projects, feel free to submit it and I'll give you some credit where credit is due. Helping with infrastructure management. Now that one we're kind of using DigitalOcean, but you know, you still want CI and stuff like that. So yeah, those are all valid skills. Maintenance, mentoring, platform. There are so many ways. Project management, writing plugins, even just asking questions and answering them on platforms like Stack Overflow. It's a valid and valuable way to contribute to growing projects. Doing research, code review is good. Security. So I'll give myself a little bit of credit here. On this pull request, we'll get our all contributors, and then we'll move over to this translation part. Tutorials. Okay, so let's finish this for code. Yep, there's a good one. And then we should get a response here. There it goes. There's a pull request that opens, and then it responds pretty timely. So this is merged. It's going to move our master forward because I will approve, rebase, and merge these. And this has got our initial all contributors. So it's the first commit there. And what I'm going to do is, before adding myself, also I'm going to alphabetize the contributors. So it's kind of, you know, an equal basis. Rebase and merge that. We'll take a quick look at the all contributors configuration and make a slight change, because by default I don't think it alphabetizes. Let's see, all contributors, where did that go? Right here. Image size. Oh, well, let's take a quick look. Let's step back. So now we have at the bottom of our section, we've got a contributors section. Very cool. Aniket Aryamane, first contributor. Thank you very much. First one I've acknowledged, at least. Yeah, I think this. Yeah, in this project it's fairly new. So yeah, awesome. I'm going to add myself though too. I've done a little bit of contribution, but let's take a look at the settings you can do. So this contributors list is just the raw data and what type of contribution they've done, and then there's some configuration. I don't know what those mean, but we're going to look at the spec. Contributors per line, project name, project owner, repo, host, such and such, skip CI. I've already given upvotes there, so we'll go ahead and come back over here, and this bot, I think is where we're going to do the configuration. There we are. So default's that. I wish that was defaulted to true, but that's my own preference. So we'll change this and we'll skim through real quick to see if there's any other settings I want to tweak right now. And this is not in any particular order, I guess, is it? And we don't have a template for the badges, so we'll leave that as it is, or the templates. And we're using the default types, but you can add your own contribution types if there's some that are omitted from that list. I think it's a pretty comprehensive list, but if you've got any suggestions for other types of contributions we can add, then the default ones, let me know in the comments here. I'll again show this emoji key. The default emojis are here. There's a lot of them. As you remember, I'll kind of scroll just a little bit fast since we already went through this. But yeah, let me know in the comments if there's one that we should add that's not captured here in the defaults, and I can add that. I think it'll allow me to add them without having to delete all the existing ones. I don't know how it works exactly. And then yeah, the contributors is a list. Skip CI makes the CI ignore the commit. So the commit from all contributors, I think. Yeah. Specify custom symbols or link templates for contribution types. Can't override the documented types. I hope that doesn't completely override them. So there's a few configuration options, but not a lot. I think the defaults are pretty sensible. We'll finish that. Makes sense to me. Basically puts everyone on an equal footing. And so since we only have the one contributor, that didn't make a change, but what I'm going to do is just add myself for a couple of things. It's kind of design. Well, let's see here. Emoji key. And I'll just go ahead and, well, maybe make it on the appropriate commits where I first did that. Project management, though, that's already, oh yeah, I can do pull request review. And at that point, I was kind of just doing project management. You do keep accessibility in mind here. I haven't been really going through the code from that vantage point. Aside from using, web standards, which are pretty, I think, increasingly so designed for accessibility. All right, so we'll accept this one, and I did a PR review pull request. Okay, yeah, so all contributors commits they skip our continuous integration, which we don't have. If you're interested in doing sort of infrastructure work or continuous integration work, would be really grateful to have our tests, for example, run on commit, setting up GitHub Actions to run the tests. That's kind of stuff that I'm not super familiar with, so that would be an easy way to get started on this project. I'll create an issue for that right now. And I'll basically specify here that we want to use GitHub Action to run project tests. Run the following. Project tests. We're using both. Can't remember. So there we go. That's an opportunity. So actually there's this nice tag that's good first issue, help wanted. I think it's a help wanted task. I'm not sure if it's good for newcomers. Maybe. Definitely an enhancement. So let's do a little bit of triage and here I am labeling these actually. The password reset and ability to change the password, I think those are a little bit low-hanging fruit. And deleting, that's basically a delete view. I could have some caveats because scheduled activities, so it wouldn't affect it. Analytics, it might, so I'm not going to mark that as good. First issue. And notifications is a bit complicated. And those little ones are already labeled. Whoops. Label as, these will be good first issues. Very cool. So kind of gardening our project. Assign myself to this and we'll take it up. Right now, I guess we're ready to do that. Let's just take a quick look at our nice new, well, we already looked at it. So let's move on. Editor. And so this task is going to be a little bit more comprehensive than I originally described it. We're at 1 hour. So I'm just going to take a quick break, gather my thoughts. I'm going to come back. I'm going to further describe this issue. It's beyond just setting up this editor. There's a couple other things I'm going to do. So I'm just grab something quick, make sure I got enough tea, and dig in for a little bit longer. I'll be right back. All right, so got my thoughts together a little bit. Close this tab, window here, and so yeah, the project localization is a few steps there. I went to explore multiple languages. So essentially, set up the project on PoEditor is just one. We need to ensure that the code is well covered. Then we need to add a widget. Let's see, generate language files. I think we're going to just support Suomi at first. Finnish language, because that's where I am. And add a little widget, little selector. Yeah, I learned some lessons in another project on that, but we can get pretty decent coverage. I took it as far in the other project to internationalize the URL structure. That had some surprising effects. I should have figured out or anticipated it. It's a little bit less common to internationalize URLs. They're so ASCII oriented, and then you've got languages with all sorts of characters. And then Django also didn't pick up the correct user locale, so people were getting 404 errors when they would come in on a localized URL structure, but Django thought that they were speaking English, so the English locale couldn't find it. There's probably a way around that, but I'm not going to go to that extent again. That was a lesson learned. I got kind of burnt on that, and it's more of a nice to have, but the important one is the user interface text. And URLs are, yeah, they're important. It is an interface to getting around, to navigating, but most people are using point and clicking to do it. Pointing and clicking. So yeah, that's about it. That's good. I'm gonna give myself a big old bucket list. So let's just take a quick purview through the code. Boing, boing, over here. Is that a right word? Purview? Nah, probably not. Purview. Perusal through the code. We're gonna take a perusal. But I want to learn new words that I'm saying. Yeah, it's not in your purview. I don't want too many tasks under my purview. I don't know. Perusal. There we go. Yeah, I can't spell it either. See, I don't know English very well. Action of reading or examining something. Yes, that's what I was thinking of. So somehow my brain indexes words alphabetically, and I'll oftentimes grab the wrong neighboring word. Yeah, we'll come over to PoEditor in a minute. Does your brain do that too? Or is that just mine? Alphabetical index, or how are your words indexed? And do you speak a second language? Because there's something that knowing a second language does to your brain. And learning a second language as a kid especially does to your brain. I'm learning a second language as an adult, and it's like challenging, mind-boggling. Part of the challenge is just motivating myself. Here we go, try much racket here. All right, so we're going to look through the code for any kind of text. First in the templates, and then in the view code, there is some UI text that's generated in the views. Also models, the model help text. Let me just help myself. This is just right now, templates. Well, what other kind of files are there? I think that's about it. Forms. And again, I'm not going to the URLs, but you can actually localize URLs. And it worked pretty good at first. Until I was getting those 404 errors, and the default locale is English, or whatever the default locale is, it falls back to that. And if a user is coming in, an anonymous user is coming in on a localized URL path, like they got a link in their email or something, but they're not signed into the site, and it falls back to the default locale. The default locale won't be able to find that URL. So there might be just a configuration option that makes that happen, but it increases the search space, so I can see that it wouldn't be efficient for it to search for all the localized paths on every request. Maybe, not sure what's going on there, but in case, lesson learned. Admin, I'm not really doing any of that. The model form localization should give me automatic text in the admin. So let's go top to bottom. Project accounts, app by app, basically caregivers, core, So in accounts, I guess I'll just run through in each one the checklist here. Starting the template, the profile template has internationalization. All text is internationalized. Check. Some of these buttons, they'll have like a little text or something. Let me get this done. I'm gonna keep this for help. Checking over the chat here. It's not very active. The chat's not very active today. Had a really good session last time. Okay, admin, I did quite a lot here. It doesn't look like there's any text, and these fields come out of the model, so they're using that translation. So placeholder text here is a good one. So I still don't know the cases to use get text lazy versus get text. I sort of understand the distinction between them, but I don't know all the nuances of like how the the things are loaded. All right, well that helps. Oh, sometimes usually. So views, you can use get text. The comments for translators. Yeah, and I'm not even using the advanced features here. But again, this is great when you're using a mature ecosystem and batteries included. Framework like Django is in the Python ecosystem. you get this stuff baked in, and it lasts a long time. It's like here to stay kind of thing. You're not having to switch out your localization library, you know, on every new project or even in the same project. It's here. It's part and parcel of the framework. I can't tell you, man, you know, express how valuable that is, that just the longevity of some of this code. You can look at code from 2010, and those patterns are pretty much relevant now. It's not antiquated. It's not, oh, that's like 2010. That's so long ago. It's like, no, this is stuff you're going to write that's going to last, and you don't have to like reinvent that again. In my eyes, that's refreshing. PG get text lazy. Oops, we're not using it. Lazy translation. Let me just read through this. Lazy versions of translation. When it's accessed. So I'm thinking, yeah, this is the tricky thing. Code paths are not executed in module load time. I guess that would be one of the code paths. Because it's instantiating a class. I'm going to use getText lazy here. Django utils translation import getText lazy. Get some muscle memory here. So I'm going to always look at that as underscore. There we go. We like that underscore though. I wonder if there's like, if I do this, nah, that'd be cool though. Now I don't need to localize that, but this is what I was after anyway. Be careful. I was just trying something out. All right, so we got a little bit of that. All right, so save that. Models, create a branch. Where are we going? Let's rebase. Oh, not rebase, pull those changes. Just auditing the whole thing all at once, comprehensively. It's been piecemeal so far. I've been trying to kind of do it ad hoc, and to a certain extent I've been doing all right. So we did getText lazy here. Value error here. I'm not sure if, ooh, that was nice formatting, and that's not used, so we can clean that up too. I'm gonna lint on the way. Now this value error, if server errors need to be localized, maybe. And you'd be creating a user here, so it wouldn't know your locale necessarily. Maybe. Custom user manager. Yeah, and I wish I wouldn't have to write that. There's probably a way of, but Django ships the default user model. It ships with a few extra fields and a username field included, and I didn't want to use the first name, last name, and username fields in this project. Maybe we'll come back around on the username part, but we're trying to keep the ability to be relatively anonymous here. Email, so there's help text that's localized. Default. Now this is one thing I probably should have thought about, but Django needs a required default value on required fields. So display name is required. I have subsequently double checked it. It allows people to specify their name at sign up, so it shouldn't really use this default very often. All right, and so we've got some localization there. Oh, now we're looking pretty good here. Just a little bit of a lint. So I'll just go ahead and commit that. It's mainly a lint change. No, not that one. Although, no. Well, this was, the lint was here. Oh, no. I'll throw that. anything else. Just right here. Good. All right, so most of the other changes are just going to be one commit. Where did we leave off? So, check, 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 test, you didn't be used. Cool, so it looks like the accounts are pretty good. Activities, templates, activity form, translation is in place. Admin doesn't need it, apps doesn't need it, forms doesn't use anything. Models has localization. Let's start at the top. Localize. And you can see we have our default activity type choices. This can be updated. We want to provide some suggestions, and usually you should only have around 9 at the most, plus, or what is it, 7 plus or minus 2. And that's good for when you start to get into analytical mindset, which I have previously supported in another app we've written for Cherry Life, and would like to get into in this one, because you can start to get a broader perspective of like what's going on holistically and look for patterns beyond just day to day, moving forward one thing at a time, which is what we're focused on now, just daily activities. All right, help text localized. Good. Looking good. Check land while I'm in some of these. Alright, no tests. Whoops, shouldn't show you that one. Yeah, that was a little bit of lint. Lint. So separate out the lint from the actual localization. Or internationalization. Let's commit. I'll just have more commits here. All these were lint. Yes, let's get text lazy. Okay. URLs and views. Up top. Already looked at this one. This one is more complicated. I need to write some tests for that. We've got some logic here. Anyway, we're looking good there. I just change one file. Let's get that. I think this was a little bit of lint. No. Just internationalization. Cool. All right. I'm just going to lint while I'm in the mindset. Even these auto-generated ones. Now, we're not linting the migrations code, but Django, it did add a feature for that. So I'll use black to format the migration code. So I like not having to think about what my preferences are and just using a good set of defaults. Media, this is just for photos and stuff. There's a few things here, so let's carefully look through these. Internationalization, block trans, confirm. So this one I need to add. Then that would look like if I just do translate here. And then just have to use different quotes around it. Ah, yes, this one. Wait a minute. That's a typo. Confirm and cancel, and this needs to be different quotes. I think I was just in a rush and didn't notice that. So the safe move is to cancel to back out of the operation. Let's check that view out. So this is the companion confirm delete. That's already running. Alright, here's Jimmy John. People, view, companions. So, go through this flow again. Incognito. Jimmy John. I forgot Jimmy John's user. Darn it. That's alright. New incognito. Invitation link. Login. Maybe I did that one. No. Sign up. Then, see, this is the flow where you get kind of disrupted. You take an invitation link and you're not registered, and it drops you off there, and you have to go back here. So I'm gonna improve that, but not right now. But basically here. So now we got companion, applicants, and then oh, right. So this is just ew, it did say cancel. Something weird happened there. Okay, so I didn't have an omission there. Yeah, that's good. That's fine. All right. The confirm wasn't localized. In any case, that's working now. All right, so I'm gonna add these all in one one go. All right, this is a bigger one. We got 18 in there. Translate add. Participate. Join. I'm using pills as buttons. It would be nice if I could have narrow buttons and give them some, back to the accessibility topic, having tooltips. I think I might be able to add tooltips to this. But also ARIA roles, because it's an interactive element that, so this is actually a good note. Accessibility audit. Oh, this displays them. Okay. Badge rounded pill. Okay. But I don't have ARIA roles, for example, here on the button, or sort of a label. I'm not sure what I need to do, but I'm going to put in an accessibility audit to go through our templates and look for interactive elements, making sure they're properly labeled and that stuff. But let's focus on translation. Well, here, that's an example. Button, title. If I just give it a title property, it'll be accessible. I think in a little bit, by default, at least it'll improve it. So, button, title equals, what are we doing here? Remove participant. Yeah, so if I see a button with a title, pretty obvious improvement. I think ARIA probably would use the title attribute, but I don't know how it works. That's something I need to learn about more. Good to know. Yeah, so this is translate. Yeah, I can't really. So let's see. I think it would default to using the title, the value, in the case where the title's not available. Right now, I'm mainly concerned with translation, though. cool. Yeah, and we'll see how these variables will work in the localization process. So lots of little oversights. Yeah. Let me just check this one out. I'm not sure what block translating. So block trans. Yeah, I can test this one pretty quick. Block trans inside of a single quote, I think. In this case, you don't need quotes around the string, and I can test this here, I think. People, Charlene, and I hope the alt text here. Inspect that. Well, I mean, it's nice, but let's just call it care group photo. Good enough. Pretty good there. Person detail. I don't know what kind of a header I should use really, because it's not kind of relevant to any context. So I probably shouldn't even be using a header. In other words, there's no other document structure around it. It's a modal dialog. I probably even copied and pasted this code, and the default example kind of used the heading to control the font size, which I should, there's just other classes for that. I can do that later. Not a big deal, not a big deal breaker. So these are translated. Single quote. Translate. And then in the daily bob there, with the shift, boom, and bam, ding, boop, save. Looking good. Person. Join received. Looks good. Woo. And people. Yeah, here we go. Oops, what did I do right here? Square curly bracket. Single quote. A little bit of dancing around on the Nordic keyboard for these. Check. Okay, it's all the templates. Bit of oversight there. This is going to involve some linting, and localization. Internationalization, maybe. Yeah, no, don't have help text there, so lint that. This is where I've got good tests, reasonably good at least, for creating, and yeah, the CRUD operations. Because that's the focal point, is everything is done through this person view more or less. So that's where the test should be, for starters at least. Companion. This maybe one day will be a class-based view, but maybe not. It's kind of a tricky one. This join as companion does quite a lot of things imperatively. Those are all used. I guess this is a note just like the format I'm looking for. All right, looked good, and I think that's a bit. There's a couple of global templates. Let's see. So of the changes, so This one's add internationalization. Pretty much all of these template changes we're adding I-18 in. And these are just lint. Yeah, I'm not sure how crazy I am about this toast library. Or I mean just using toasts in general. They're kind of overlapping the navigation. If I could get them to pop below the navigation, it might be a little bit better. Cool. So this is Alphabetize. That's what I'm actually trying to do, translate. Localize it. Yeah, that one's the one I gotta be careful about. Inside of the block title. Oops. Make sure I don't use the image abbreviation. We're good to go. Navigation. There should be some text here. Now we're not going to localize or internationalize the kind of product name, probably. So I'll leave that alone. And this is a label, so we'll add the localization there. Here's the little keyboard dance I got to do on the Nordic keyboard. Oops, I forgot the translate part. Shift. Translate. I'm gonna do like, okay, so this one's easy. Shift. For the percentage, then I Alt-Ger. It's not super bad. And then boink, dong. It's just all of the break. Well, there's the curly braces, which we use pretty often, are Alt-Ger, and I think tilde is Alt-Ger. Equals translated. All right. I'm going to go ahead and lint that, see if it changes anything. Looking good. And was there any core stuff that was going to land? I think I already did these, didn't I? We'll publish the branch in any case. And now I'm going to generate. Let's create it from here. Yeah. Now that I'm signed into GitHub. I-18 in audit. Closes. This is one that I can't close. I just have another number, which I don't. 52. It would be nice if I could add a reference here, but hey, that's not a big deal. And it's a draft. So mostly like right in the IDE. That's pretty tight workflow. I like that. And being able to review pull requests and stuff right in the URL. Check that out. Look at that. Renders it, shows me all the commits. So if anyone's interested in getting some experience in reviewing pull requests, you have already pretty much done that by watching this live stream. But yeah, you could skim the code here. And if I refresh this right here, maybe fix my number 60. Essentially, a pull request review is just looking at the files changed in a more concise manner than watching a whole YouTube video. And I don't know. It's sort of, some of it's seeing what's there and what's removed, and some of it's kind of seeing what's not there, what's overlooked. So this is a little bit of a different one. I might have overlooked some localization strings, for example, or the lint can be a little bit noisy. But in general, if you'd like some experience and credit with pull request reviews, here's a good place to start, or you can keep an eye on the pull requests tab on the project. Now let's go through the Django docs real quick on the translation docs. We're going to prepare these for PoEditor. In order to do that, we need to configure the default language if it's not already configured, configure the supported languages, generate the strings. Also, I need to add this widget to switch languages, and I think there's some middleware and other configuration I need to go through to make everything work, which actually was a bit of a tangle. I have a pull request I could compare, so let's take this one thing at a time. Make messages. I think that's what it's called. Make migrations, make messages. That would be consistent. Let's Control F messages. Yeah. So we're gonna do that. Just tilde project. Oh, I see. I'm already here. Well, but the other ones are running the service. Let's see. I don't necessarily want the English messages. I want the language configuration. So let's make sure you're activated the translation for your project. The fastest way is to check a middleware. You need to do that. Now, I wish there was just a really concise step-by-step guide to all the little. It's not many, but there's a few little things you got to change in there that if one of them is not there, it's not going to work. So this middleware is a key one. Middleware. And local middleware. There's also something in the template, I think. I'm curious about this. It's got some ways it automatically determines it, and that lets the user specify it. Locale middleware. Okay, and they say to put it after the session before common. That's right where I put it. Okay. Might look like this. Oh man, I got a little bit of clutter here. Out of tea. It's 1 a.m. Oh man. Probably don't need more tea. The language prefix might be a way we can get the anonymous URL support for internationalizing URL patterns, yeah. Need to add this to our config. Also settings. Let's see if we have a localization. Language code, our default is English. We just probably should use regular I don't know that it matters. No, don't do that. Now we are sort of an English first project, but alphabetizing them doesn't make much sense because it's going to localize them, and I need to get this lazy, get text lazy there. I mean, I could localize them from the English standpoint if and that would just be called finish from the English standpoint. Although Suomi is the correct. The Finnish people call the language, so we also want gotta be lazy because this is not running module load time or whatever I can't remember how they phrased it. Pretty sure. Yes. But you see, that's kind of not mentioned here that I need to make this languages list. It would be just really quick good if I had a quick, concise. Here's the stuff you need to change to enable localization. Pluralization, this is all good, important detail. But give me the checklist. Give me the checklist. This code. No, wait. There's a view I need to enable. For language switching. It's cool. It lets you localize client code if you've got it. So you can still leverage as much of the back end as possible. I think that's a good approach. Not to have a heavy front end. For most projects, at least. All right. Very cool. That way you don't have to have separate localization flows for your client server code, you could call it. Now there's a language, this is all JavaScript stuff, a lot of JavaScript stuff. JSON catalog, performance. URL patterns, that was danger zone. For each request, in other words, you need to have, so this is. Yeah, but the thing is I do now have locale middleware in our middleware setting, but the wrong locale was set and the URL didn't resolve when I did this thing. It probably warns me about that even. And this prefixes would probably be the pattern. The language prefix, if I would just leave that in there, would be good to go. But I don't think I disabled the prefixing. Yeah, we just need a locale directory now. There we go. Looks at text files too. How cool. So you can localize, I guess, email messages, for example. Wow, okay. And I don't know if I need an English locale here. I think the English locale is in this source. Right, and this is an important step. We'll have to compile them, and I'm still on the fence about if I should keep the compiled messages under revision control or have some kind of a deployment step, or in the development process also you have to compile those. And it does show me how to make this little language chooser, language set redirect review. So I'll have to add this to our internationalization. I have to like read this whole document in order to kind of get all the checklist. I would just prefer a checklist. I think I found one on Stack Overflow, but yeah, still it'd be nice if the Django docs had one. So I'm just doing this alphabetically. Here we are. So this is like a form we'll put on here. I'm going to copy and paste this. It's pretty good code. Load I18, and we're going to put this in our nav bar. So in our templates, navigation, and I'll add some bootstrap classes and put it next to the, oh man, how did I miss those? Scroll blindness. I think I was even commenting this file. I just didn't get to the bottom or something. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, real quick. That's it seemed like there was something in that template processor I needed to add also. Like in the context processor. Alright, so let's go over here real quick and just in either case we'll want a language select. Maybe I'll put it to the far right. Oh gosh. We should. These IDs would be intelligent enough to do the indentation based on like the line you pasted it in and the relative indentation of the subsequent lines. Maybe there's a way to do that. Always interested in new tips on how to use the IDE more effectively. So if you've got any suggestions for how I can paste with preserved relative indentation, I'd like to know that, because that's a common kind of nuisance. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Now we need styling, and I actually want to use just a little bit of JavaScript to trigger it on change. I'm going to borrow some code from another project. First, let me get the styling in for this. So we got a form. If I give it a class form, put my form class. And then we get some bootstrap stuff, and then we've got a hidden input and then a select input. And I think just by doing that, Bootstrap 5 will, you don't have to have any special classes for navigation forms anymore. So that's good. And now it's got squashed a bit. But when I remove it, oops, that's the mobile. There's a hot key for this. Control Shift M. I don't know why it wants me to sign in when I do that. Device. Toolbar, Control Shift M. That's what I'm trying to do. Control Shift M. Tries to get me to sign in. Maybe the mouse focuses something, or somehow the keyboard shortcuts are conflicting. I'm going to remove the go button. I'm going to submit this on change, but basically if I do now, it's already got something. Oh, and the dates are what makes it focused. Translated to. I wonder how that happened. Huh. Weird. Yeah, I guess just Django knows certain words. I don't know where that comes from. Huh. What? That's weird. All right, so mind boggled. And I also haven't generated the, whatever it is, the binary localization. So some of this is coming from the back end, obviously, because it wasn't in the PO file. Okay, so we've got this. What do we change here? Add navigation, add settings. And I'm going to go to this other project here. Jerry Life, we were working on Jerry Life. Caregiving, and I added localization in the navigation template. And ours was just a little bit simpler. Oh, those are the models. Okay. And it's in front of. Oh, yeah. So I just actually, that's a good idea. Put the internationalization code in its own template. Yeah. We'll come here and just do that because it's a bit verbose. I'm going to use a verbatim. How did I trigger it? Let's see how the rendering looks. That's crazy. It just works. Right, because the button is the form submit. There's a form, and this when you select. Wait a minute here. I got this one off Stack Overflow, I'm pretty sure. So we got a button to open that. And create a drop-down menu. And each of those is a form, right? And has its own submit button. So when you select one of those, you're like submitting the form. So it's pretty elegant. A bit mind-boggling for a minute, especially at 1:30 in the morning. All right, looking good though. Yeah, we're gonna finish this. I'm almost at a tea. I better be conservative with my tea. Camera's blurry. Ding. Oh well. I think I was squinting at the text. All right. Cool. Now I think I can take this PO file, take the PO file and upload it here on PoEditor. I'll add a new project. This is called Companionship Project. It's called Companionship Care. What else, Jerry Life? Yeah. So this would be under home code, companionship care, project, locale, fee, messages, BO. Now, does it need an English basis for this? No. All right, cool. I could do an initial run through these 5 pages. Weird. That's the template tag there. Let me see if I can clean that one up. Are you sure you want to remove the companion from person? I don't know why that. Block translate. Now I see. Here and here. I'll clean it up a bit. I need to run that importer again. Language, there's like a import, same. It's basically not so important. I wonder if that would be confusing to have these. And it's because I'm using template indentation just for like coding purposes to make the code more legible, but it's not something that's, see, I'm just have a block area line break here. Block trans. It's a bit old. Let's see if there's newer discussion and consensus around that. It's also hard to read through a discussion. Yeah, this is a bit of a bane that the Django templates are have significant white space. Okay, trimmed. Very cool. Didn't read it. Didn't read the docs. Well, I did. In fairness, I read through the docs, but not everything. So, block trans. Cool. There's a lot to read. I'm looking for a particular thing. Trimmed. Here we go. Yes. All right. I think it'll make a little more sense for the people, localizers, to not have to worry about the white space. So wait, where do we want to use the trim? Can I use it before or after the width? Trimmed. Let's try this. Trimmed width. And what was the other one? Well, let's see if that one works. Control, clearing that up. No confusion. And re-import. Import. Same file. Also import translations. There isn't anything, but I'm just gonna see if it. Yes, it did work. Okay. Nice. All right, there's one more. Yeah, I'm glad that the 2007 discussion was looking like not going to happen, but clearly it's like been handled. No. Dang it. I like that. I think those are the only two that were kind of jumping out at me as weird. And we'll have to have a consistent tone of voice and some kind of conventions around punctuation, for example. For now, it's a good start. Quite a lot we're accomplishing today. And one more upload, or did I do it? Oh man, I can't remember now. Let's see if I uploaded the update. The second one. Nope. All right, one more time. Then we're ready to go. Localization, crowdsourcing. If you're interested in contributing to this project and you know a language other than English, or you know also knowing English hopefully, and really could use some help translating into your language, we'll add that language support to the project. Right now, I only have a Finnish translator, so that's where we're targeting. And we're located in Finland. Select all, delete. Nice. We got 85 total terms. It's 255 words. So yeah, maybe I don't know how involved that is from a translator standpoint. But yeah, if you'd like to get involved, we'd really appreciate it. We can just add a language here. Lots of languages to support. Very cool, and we'll invite you to our project. So I think that's it. I kind of covered a lot of ground in this hour and a half, or however long we've been working on the localization pull request. Internationalization, actually. I should say. We're doing the part to make the language, make the project multilingual, and then we need localization help to translate it to the relative languages. So we did that. 18 audit, poedit setup, read the docs. I'll check my checklists. I mean, I think I did this. I'll just give these up votes anyway. And the trimmed one, that was good. And it was there in the docs. These docs are very comprehensive, but in some ways that can actually work against you. When you want a specific answer, you gotta read a lot. All right, what's my related issue? Checklist. I like having checklists, like internationalization checklist, really good. Generated that. The language chooser widget, set up the project. Initial languages, finish. Probably not gonna target Dutch. That's cool. That was just kind of a joke in the live coding session. So we've got this draft PR. I'll go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and merge that and close this issue. So ready for review. Nice. A little bit of work, not too bad. Not too many lines. Lines, yeah, 515 files. So yeah, not gonna really expect much in terms of anybody's peer review here. A lot of it is just generating that locale file. Huh, nice. And yeah, these words can be shared across templates, or you could make them make that word close independent. Each time you use the word close, it could have different context. So this would affect all these templates, or you could designate it as a different word on this template and a different version of close on that template. All right, as you can see, I'm getting a bit tired. It's been a long session. I'll go ahead and rebase and merge. Confirm that, and I'll deploy off screen. We do have a demo of this running if you'd like to try it out. Delete branch. I'm really slowing down. At beta.companionshipcare. If you are watching this video and at any time in the next after the live stream, sorry, I'll have deployed it, and you should see the translation language select here, hopefully. All right, well, this has been a good live stream. Focused on a couple of pull requests. Got this I-18N audit over and merged a pull request from another contributor. So yeah, let me just roll out with a recap. I like to summarize the changes made in each live coding session for people who want the TLDR version of the video. So if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and do a quick recap, gather my thoughts. Mostly just show the pull requests we achieved today. I'll probably just focus at that level. Yeah. So we've got this and that, and we'll take a quick look at our all contributors guide as well. So we started in reverse order. The accounts, then the all contributors. Here's the project running. So we can take a look. I usually like to take a look at the beginning. And I'll show this project in poedit. And do an outro with the beta. We're looking for beta testers now. Very cool. Okay. Timestamp. Hello and welcome to a recap of today's Python and Django live code session. We've been working on the Companionship Care app and worked through a few tasks. We sort of reviewed and worked on a pull request to refactor the user profile view from a function-based view to a class-based view. We'll take a look at the code for this in a moment. We also added this language chooser, so we can begin to internationalize the app. I went through the code and found a lot of instances where I had just plain English strings and change those, and then begin to localize it into different languages. Right now we're going to support English and Finnish as our default, but if you've got some experience with another language and can translate from English to that language, we'd appreciate help. So let's take a quick look. We're open source on GitHub at github.com/jerrylife/companionship-care. We've got a couple of other open source projects under the Jerry Life organization, and we're always looking for contributors. On that note, one thing we added today was this all contributors section to highlight not only code contributions, which we received today from an outside contributor, but many types. Design work or internationalization are a couple of examples. Also help with accessibility or promoting the project, adding documentation, coming up with ideas, finding bugs. There's tons and tons of ways, helping us with our infrastructure and continuous integration and testing. There's lots of ways to contribute that aren't code oriented necessarily. So we want to kind of align with this all contributors sort of, I guess, initiative. And allcontributors.org, you can find out more information about why it is important to recognize all sorts of contributors and not just code, which kind of takes a privileged position at the table, so to speak. So back on track, we added the all contributors to the project and initialized the configuration here. And then we worked on a pull request. This came in the last live code session. I was kind of struggling to convert a function-based view over to a class-based view. Essentially, when you go to change your profile, you have a view here that renders your profile, and it doesn't take any argument. And when you're making the GET request, it returns a model form, which should be instantiated with your user information. And it was just difficult. I couldn't figure out how to kind of get the form to instantiate with the request user instance. We want the person who's visiting this profile page to only be able to edit their own profile and not others. You know, there's cases where you have another content type, another entity, like this is a person, and that entity has an ID in our database, and you know, you would want to be able to edit that, but you have the context information there from the URL, and you can do that. But the profile is a little bit of a special case. So it turned out it was actually not so hard, but it did take a bit of review, and I want to say thanks to Aniket Aryamane for their contribution here. And so we'll dig into the code just a little bit in this review as well, but I've shown basically from a user perspective what these changes look like in the user interface. And now let's take a look at not only from the coding perspective, but the local or translator's perspective, how you can contribute to this project or how the project is organized. So we'll just use the GitHub pull request review interface to give us insight into how the code was changed for each of these tasks. So it turned out after some conversation, we didn't need really big changes to make this profile view work properly as a class-based view. By default, the class-based view will return a form and render it, and the form is just called form generically. So I had previously called it user form in my function-based view to give it a little bit more semantic meaning, but it's okay to go with defaults. In this case, going with the defaults saved a little bit of code. We have, when we're switching from a function-based view to a class-based view, you have to instantiate that as a view. So that's all we did here basically. We just imported it and instantiated it. We were able to clean up several of our imports here and used just Django generic edit views. We had a create view previously and added an update view. Our previous function-based view was several lines of imperative code and makes it a little bit difficult to trace the logic. So if this person is submitting a post, we want to grab the form and instantiate it with the request user. That was the key thing. A person should only be able to edit their own profile. So that form should, you need to attach an instance here of the user model. Validate the form, save it, send a success message, which I actually ended up deprecating in this pull request, and redirect. If there's a problem, display an error. And otherwise, if it's not a post request, we're going to send the form to the user. So all that I'm just like telling imperatively, step by step, what the computer should do. The benefit of the class-based view is that imperative logic is hidden from me. It's abstracted. All I need to do is say, declare, this is the form class to use. This is the template to render. And this is the URL to redirect on success. The only caveat is we needed to instantiate that form with an instance of the user model that corresponds to the requesting user. And it turns out that in an update view, the get object method, you can override that and pass in whatever the object is you're trying to update. It was very surprisingly straightforward. It just not all kind of straightforward paths are obvious, and sometimes you take a really meandering, really kind of trouble. Sometimes it takes you a while to get there, even though the distance wasn't far. So that's that. We were able to switch the function-based view to a class-based view. Pull request 53 with a new contributor. Very cool. And after that, the main focus of the session was on adding internationalization, going through all the project code pretty much, and looking for any English strings that didn't have this internationalization function, wrapping them so that we could generate what's called a locale file that can be sent to our translation interface. So we'll take a quick look at the code and the translation interface, and I'll mention that we have a beta test going on. A lot of the changes in this code are just lint that was picked up on save. I just took the opportunity also to go through and apply black to automatically form some of our code, so we'll kind of scroll past those. And then it involved about 500 lines of code, but a lot of those lines are actually just this locale file. So the code, the PR seems relatively big. This is not a huge one by any means, but a lot of it is auto-generated. So overall, I'm just going to highlight this one time. We're using this translation utility from Django called getTextLazy. And what that does is using GNU getText underneath or behind the scenes to, I don't know how it works, but it pulls in the translation strings from these locale files or the compiled locale, which I didn't include, and brings them into the template or whatever the context is. The lazy version is used in cases where you're working inside of like a class or something where it's not going to be localized at the moment it's declared. So it'll defer loading that until the class is instantiated or something like that. That's my basic understanding. Is lazy, so it waits until it's needed to get the localization instead of doing it at the point of where you're declaring it. And so we use the convention to import the getText and getTextLazy as underscore. And basically all you do is you go through all the templates, and anytime you've got an English text in our case, we just wrap that in code. We wrap it with this underscore, and in the templates it's slightly different. For the accounts model, we've got a few linting changes, but again, this getTextLazy, and you'll just see this over and over, so I'm not going to really go line by line. I will mention where it's different, but every place is using getTextLazy, and we're pretty much converting single quotes to double quotes because that's Black's preference, and I'm going with convention over configuration here. And line formatting. I'm going to scroll a little bit faster here, line formatting, and I'll point out the differences as they arise. But here's default values for a text choices field. Same principle, these are just applied to a model field. That way, they were previously unlocalized. That way, users, even in the form widgets, are seeing localized text. There's some lint. And here's a bit of the core settings changes that were needed. So I'm importing this localizing thing here because we define a language list, and those language names, the keys here are used internally, but the user actually sees a language selection widget here, which will localize the language names. In English, we call the Finnish language Finnish, but it's actually Suomi. It's the name of the country and the language, and from the perspective of Finnish people. or yeah, suomalize it. Anyway, mä puhun vähän suomea, opiskelen suomea. Here we go, added the middleware to enable this locale. Note this middleware needs to go in between the session middleware and the common middleware. There's some, there's not really a checklist that shows you step by step how to do this. Maybe I'll write one. I think I found it on Stack Overflow, but not in the Django docs. And there's some subtlety to it. The default language code, I just switched from US oriented to just English and then define the language list again. So that's basically all the settings that I know that are necessary. I might have some gotchas that come up later. Here's a linting change, but the path, you need to add the internationalization path. URLs, that is, so that your users can change language by a language switcher. Now here's the auto-generated PO file, and this is for the finished locale. And this is essentially all the messages, all the texts that I went through and labeled in English language. UI texts and texts in the code that make their way to the UI. So it's just kind of a big file. Let's scroll a little bit faster. As you can see, a lot of lines of code, boilerplate, and it's auto-generated, so it's not so interesting to us. Yeah, some lint changes. Now here's the templates. I just want to touch base on a couple of these and make sure I don't omit any kind of major things. In our templates, we're using two main ways of internationalizing the text. One is block trans. It's used for cases where you have like a lot of text, and that text might have variables in there. And one thing that came up is when the text, for formatting reasons, I like to have the text on a different string so you don't get a really long line over here. But Django templates are sensitive to that, those new lines. And so we have this trimmed, what you call like a filter or something that will actually trim leading white space, I suppose, and new lines, for example. And that way, in your localization flow, the translator doesn't get kind of like these weird blank lines and spaces that are confusing. They only get this string. So we added this trimmed. If you're coming across this problem where you have weird spaces around your translation strings, you can add this trimmed option. We'll show what that looks up here in a moment. And the other, in localization UI, the other type of translation is just you use the translate tag and you put your English there. So we use this throughout for the most part, throughout all the interface internationalization, and this on a couple of occasions. So that's it. I think really the rest of this is just adding those translate tags. You can see translate, translate, translate. And some nuance if you're using, some kind of HTML attributes. The attributes need to be quoted, but that quote can collide with the internal quote. So you just, when you're quoting, including quotes inside of a string, you just got to have the other type of quote. So single quote can encompass a double quote or the other way around. Doesn't really matter. It's a matter of preference, I suppose. I'm going to scroll a bit faster. There's another block trans, trimmed, translate. I just want to make sure I don't omit anything. And then the tests were kind of linted a bit. And this is actually, so a good thing I came down here. This is an interesting pattern. There's a couple other issues with the lint. I'll clean that up. For allowing the user to select their language and making that change as soon as they select it. See how there was no other step there. It just happens immediately. Now there would be a network response time here, but essentially it happens right as soon as you click it now. This was a Stack Overflow response, but I'll show you how it works. I should have attributed the original author, although I've changed it a bit. So anytime you're working with internationalization and templates, you always have to load these IATN tags. I'm not sure if I mentioned that previously, but you'll pretty much see it in all the templates. Let's see if our homepage, if I missed that homepage. Yeah, see, this is what happens if you don't include it. Good catch. All right, I'll include that in the pull request. Actually, I merged the pull request, didn't I? Yeah, if you don't load that IATN tags, your translations won't work. Very cool. That's what happens. So I'll note to self, add the IE10 and import, load IE10 in the home. Okay, good. So we have basically our navigation menu. It has this, now it has the IE10 select widget right there. And to do that, it's essentially going to set up some variables. The current language that we've got selected, and get some details about it. The localized name and the internal language code. And that is used to create this button that drops down. And that just puts the localized name and then the language code in parentheses. And the same thing when you do drop it down, it's a little bit different. Then we're going to, actually this is redundant. Get the current languages language code again, we can delete that. We get the languages list. And for each of those languages, we're going to get some details about it. We iterate over the languages, creating a list item. Bootstrap knows that list items in this button context should be displayed like so, and I think I tweaked the markup a bit so it would extend cleanly to the edges, and it's kind of extending to the edge of the screen, so maybe I'll have it pop out left or something like that. Some minor UX improvements here. But here's the most important part. Each of these list items is a form. Each one, so that's a form and that's a form. And they have the CSRF token, so prevents cross-site request forgery, and a hidden value for this redirect to, which the redirect to on any given page is like the current page, essentially. So it's saying redirect here when this form is submitted. Django knows to look for that. And apparently the URL, set language URL knows to look for this redirect to, or whatever you, or the next argument, sorry, the next argument, the redirect to is a template variable in any case. So the set language URL looks for an optional next argument, and it'll tell you, it'll put you back on the page or whatever page that was passed into that. It's got the language code. It's another hidden input, and then we've got an input of submit input. It's the only drop-down item, so using a Bootstrap drop-down item class with the localized name and the language code. And since the language is a hidden input, this is what the set language URL is looking for. And again, it just looks like that. So you can see the drop-down item with submit and the value of FI. So if you're looking for a nice user experience for the selection of language, the Django docs has a similar one, but there's a go button or a translate button. So there's like a form with a button, and it's kind of looking a little bit awkward on the navigation view. So this is a nicer, more succinct, or yeah, more elegant user experience. So a couple of issues I need to clean up here, and that's it. That's the bulk of the changes. Now, the other side of the internationalization is localization. We're using this Poe editor software, and we've created a project here, and I created a default, or our first language is Finnish, because that's, aside from English, where we're going to be, mainly operating this software in Finland for the time being, and maybe people in other locales will want to use it as well. But when you add a language, main page here, you can import a Poe file. Once you've done that and created a language, all of your default language strings will be here on the left as keys. The way Django does it, uses them as translation keys, and then the value here is, that way you can see the key and value right next to each other. And there's option for comments not only in this interface but in the translation files, so that you can kind of give hints about how this is used. And then a translator just comes in here. They will invite crowdsource members to the team, And it's got an option for automatic translation. I might do a first round with the automatic translation. And you just go kind of page by page and check them. If you do automatic translation, it's going to kind of be a little bit weird at times. So there's 85 total terms. I think it was 255 words or something along that line. It wasn't a huge amount. Okay, this is already going pretty long. And that's been a summary. Kind of achieved a bit of stuff today. It was pretty nice. And we do have a beta deployment at beta.companionship.care. And as of this time, I haven't deployed the changes to the internationalization pull request, and it's a good thing I haven't, because this homepage would now be broken. It's an oversight on my part. So once again, this has been a Python and Django live coding session where we've been working on some open source software for Jerry Live. Project is Companionship Care on GitHub. If you're interested in participating in this project or others, we've got a few mainly Python oriented projects. We've got a lot of issues that are marked as good first issue and help wanted, and I'm pretty active in GitHub. I can help with any questions or comments. If you've got ideas for the project, feel free to submit them here, and I hope to see you around the stream. I hope you're well, and have a great day.